welcome to Legacy, a broadcast that will stir your heart, renew your heart and your life and your family. And so we want to welcome you here. We have Dr. Walker, and Shirley's not been with us this month. We've really missed her, and
we have. She adds a new dimension.
She does. I've had a chance to say more.
That's what I meant. We miss her.
That's right. That's right. She will, Lord willing, be back with us next month.
Well, we're looking forward to that, and my dear wife Tex is with us, and so we've had a busy month this month. You know, the month of January is just a packed month. Matter of fact, the first half of 2007 is a very, very busy year for us this year. So we're excited about the year, but it's just an extremely busy year. I want to talk about 2007 just a little bit. We've been talking about renewing our faith and our walk with God and renewal and the pursuit of God over the past couple of weeks. But 2007 to me, for me personally, has some things of interest. One, I'll be 60 years old, so you know that's interesting to me. That I will have been a Christian for actually 40. How many years?
43.
42 years. 42 years. I will have been a Christian. But I think something broader than me is for the whole nation. There was the last major national revival that took place in 1857, 1858. It was what was called the Great Prayer Revival. And it was begun in New York City. A man by the name of Jeremiah Lamphere put out a notice in the financial district of New York that there was going to be a prayer meeting. And he went there, and he was the only one that showed up. And then this was in September of 1857. He was the only one, and then a few minutes later, before the hour had concluded, there were about 6 men who came, and that thing took off. It took off because there was simultaneously, externally, something that was taking place. One was that there was a collapse in the financial institutions of the day.
Wall Street, our big New York financial district, just turned over.
Went south. I mean, really big time. But now, at the same time that was happening, God had put it in the heart of a man to start a prayer meeting. And they had started praying. So when that happened, they had this little nucleus. And all of a sudden, people who could care less about God were seeking God. And God came, and God moved, and God worked. And it spread to the major cities. You'd have people, 10,000, 8,000. In Chicago, there were several thousand meeting at the YMCA. And there was a shoe salesman who went to one of those prayer meetings by the name of D.L. Moody, and he became one of the great evangelists of all times. So God moved. There was a great move of the Spirit of God because of prayer. Now, it's 150 years later. Here we sit with all the technology, all the stuff that we can use. What can we learn? What can we learn from 150 years ago?
But for 2007, I tell you, Sammy, as you're describing that, I'm taking a journey to Israel, and I'm getting off a bus at a place called Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, and it's just up from the Dead Sea. But while you were describing the effort at the prayer meeting, that seemed like just a small effort, and an assistant pastor at a Presbyterian church, I think there in New York somewhere.
A Reformed church.
Reformed church, okay. But he was beginning to pray. He was trying to get others to pray. The outpouring would come later, but as you said, there had to be. When you go to Qumran, you're just the guides will show you how there were these huge pits dug, and they were to hold water. But there's no water. But what happens is it rains up in the mountains. And in order for them to contain the water that comes their way, they would, by hand, dig these huge, I'm talking major cisterns. You just think, because they're having to go through rock, and it had to take an awful lot of effort. But it was a network of cisterns to contain the water when it finally came, the rainwater when it finally came. And some of what we may be doing for the biggest part of this year, or maybe some folks have been doing this for many years, is they've been preparing those cisterns for the water when it comes, from the outpouring of the Spirit when it comes.
Well, over the past several years, one of the encouraging things that has happened is the prayer movements in America. Now, I don't see a desperation in those prayer movements, but there are prayer movements. And I think what it is people are just doing the hard work of getting out there and, like you say, digging those cisterns. And there's a network of prayer movements that are just, nobody's in charge of it, nobody's in control of it. It's just happening. It's just taking place. And God is just initiating it. And that gives great hope. But that great prayer movement in 1857, it began with somebody who just had a burden. I don't. My suspicion is that Lamphere did not really see what was going to take place. All he knew was he had a burden to start. He had that
one step that he was supposed to try to take.
And that's probably for 2007 one of the great lessons that we can learn is that there's one step that God has for each of us, and it may look like something small. It could be big, it could be small, but that one step is we need to be obedient to what we know. So many of us are saying, "Oh, what is it that God wants?" Well, what you do know, if you're obedient to that, God will bless that.
And maybe somebody who's watching has just tried to initiate a prayer meeting at work, or has just begun to send a word out down your street where you live to come and pray, and it can seem so insignificant, seem so small, but the work of the Spirit to put that desire in that one's heart today is the same kind of prompting that Jeremiah Lamphere felt 150 years ago. That it was, he saw his church, he saw his corner of New York City, he didn't know who would come, and if he was the only one, he was going to be there. Yeah. God honors that, Sammy. And that's transferable. That was true then. It's the same kind of work of the Spirit today.
Dr. Roy Fish, who we both know as a great scholar and professor of evangelism, former professor of evangelism at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. He wrote a book on the 1857 revival, and I don't know where he got all the documentation, but he got documents in every state of baptismal records in Baptist churches. Yeah. And the growth from pre-prayer meeting time to post was pretty remarkable. And it says to me that if, I'm sure Lamphere didn't have any idea about what was going to happen in Mississippi or what was going to happen in Illinois or Indiana. All he knew was that one thing, and yet the fruit of that multiplies, and it's just amazing.